Chapter 5 Clouded Horizons. As March neared its end, patrol missions increased. Johnny became a less frequent visitor to the Lark. It seemed he had a blonde interest in a neighboring village. For a while he had seemed to have something going with Annabeth, but Eleanor was never sure. She missed him, but she was also day to day more engrossed in the young American sergeant pilot. Janice asked, and because there was no reason to hide it, she told her, "I think we're slowly falling into something serious here, Jan. I like him. And I think I like him the way you did Tim. You knew from the start with Tim, didn't you?" "I think I did, though we were much wilder than you two. I think we drove Mother and Father wild with worry. I think they would like your quiet American and the well-behaved, old-fashioned way you seem to be courting each other." Jan laughed. "For a long time, all of us thought you and Johnny would end up together. He adores you. You practically raised each other, but neither of you ever moved past the brother-sister feeling, did you?" "I don't know. There were brief moments I wondered, but never really thought about it. Honestly, I think he set me and Danny up. It was pretty deliberate. He's a funny man now, Johnny. I wish you would find a nice girl, and I'm also kind of glad it's not you, Elle. I think as much as you love him, he would wear your heart out. I don't think he'd ever settle down completely. Look at his father, he never did either. There's a big streak of him in Johnny, and yet they can't be in the same room without going for each other. It's a sad thing. I think everything Johnny does is to tick off his father. Enlisting in the RAF wasn't purely because he liked the idea of flying. It must have kicked off a terrible fight. He came to see me to tell me he'd enlisted. I was still in school, and I remember he had a bruised cheekbone and he was positively pale and yet wildly triumphant. I wonder what would have become of Johnny if he didn't mostly grow up in our house. He would have been a pickpocketing street urchin growing up." Janice laughed. "Sadly, I think you're not far off, but back to your American. What are your plans?" "We haven't really talked anything definite yet. He wants a plot of land somewhere to start a sort of flying club on and farm on a small scale. I want something more than to carry drinks and wipe tables, but I don't know what yet. It's very confusing." "I know. It's a bad time to try and figure out what you want in your life. I don't think anything will ever be the way it was before the war. Have you told Mom and Dad about Danny?" "I mentioned him. I'll keep them in the loop if we make decisions. Otherwise, Mom will be nipping at my heels for letting her youngest be seduced by airmen and not telling her." Eleanor felt her face getting warm. "There's no seducing happening, Jan." Jan shrugged, laughed. "Look at you blush. None yet then, anyway. Just keep them in the loop and make good decisions." "You're awful, Jan. It's not like that." "I'm just saying I don't want to be the one that tells them nothing if you elope and run off to America with their grandchild. You read too many bad romance novels." "You're sensible and I trust you, Eleanor. He's a good boy, I think, and he's bringing out a shine in you that I haven't seen before. It's good to have someone who makes you shine." It was an unaccustomed moment of sweetness from her older sister. "Thanks, Jan. I'll keep Mom and Dad in the loop. I do think it's going to get serious, and if he wants to go somewhere else after the war, I suppose we'd go. We just can't tell them in a letter that he's really American. Best to stick with the Canada story." It was strange to say the thoughts that she played in her head at night out loud. She imagined a little cottage out on a ranch and him flying a bright yellow plane in at sunset and coming home for dinner. It was very unreal and a very movie-like, idyllic picture, and she knew nothing was quite like that in real life. But it was a sweet picture and something to hold in her heart. She did right too, because Jan was right. Dear Mother and Father, how are you? We are all well and the weather is getting much better. It's feeling like summer now. The war is getting closer. Poor Tim is working ridiculous hours and Jan is often out nights on duty. I'm getting to be a good carrier of drinks and wiper of tables. Duncan gave me a small raise. I think I might head to London on my off day and buy some summer clothes soon. I seem to have nothing wearable that isn't something a schoolgirl would wear on holiday. I might ask Johnny to go with me and catch up a little. I've barely seen him lately, but I gather he has a girlfriend in a different town. So Janice has been after me to keep you up to date on Danny, my sergeant pilot. She seems to think we're about to elope or something. I do like him though, and I think you would too, but there are no plans to elope. He's a bit like what the movies reckon a southern gentleman would be like. He walks me home when not on duty, and we've taken to walks in the country. I feel like we're making steady progress, and at the current rate he might ask me to marry him in about 7 years, so you can hear we're really moving fast. Don't let Jan worry you if she writes. I'll write again next week. Have you seen any tigers yet in India? You must send me some photographs of what it looks like there, and I'd like one of you too. I miss you. All my love, Eleanor. She asked Johnny to go with her to London, and he very graciously accepted, and then criticized her fashion sense the whole time. They laughed most of the way in his scrappy little convertible, and it felt just like the old days when they ran the town flat on bare feet. They ended the day at a street-side cafe and drank cocktails. So how's life and love, Johnny? I hear you're having a marvelous affair with a buxom blonde. He scoffed and laughed. Am I the talk of the town then? Sweetheart, you wouldn't believe it. I met Patricia at a dance and we really hit it off. Spent 2 weeks driving back and forth, thought I'd met my future wife, and then turns out she's got a husband on a ship in Portsmouth. He's a big guy too. I'm not getting me face rearranged for a married woman. Oh no, Johnny. I am so sorry. You don't look very heartbroken though. Are you sure you were thinking she's your future wife? See, you know me too well, Elle. My heart is just fine. I'm curious on yours, though. It seems as though you and my American wingman are really getting along. It seems so, doesn't it? Johnny smiled, his blue eyes teasing. He's a good lad, Al. You're the same kind of folk. There's just one thing. You'll have to hear his story and then decide if it's A-okay with you. I know you like I raised you, and I sort of did. I think I know how you'll take to it. But you'll have to hear it yourself, and if you decide to stick with him after hearing it, you'll have to show him. Where he comes from is a big deal to him, and the one thing keeping him back. He told me the story one night when we'd had a couple too many beers. It's not my story to tell, but it shook me, and I think you have it in you to hear it and like him the more for it instead of run away. She was silent for a long moment, staring earnestly at Johnny, shocked a little. Is that story the reason behind those sudden quiet moments? The change in his eyes whenever something about his past comes up? I don't look that deeply into his eyes, but you'll see he doesn't quite mingle with the lads. He's just the tiniest bit out of place. I don't think he mixed with people much since he was a boy. Take your time and don't hint to him that you know there's something. But you'll have to get him to tell you if you really like him. Is it something really bad? It shook me, as I said. But it's more about how his life has been, not how he's been. I think you'll like him more, not less. But he might not see it that way. He was even jumpy around me after he'd let it slip. If he tells you and you need to, come talk to me about it. We've been flying and living together for a few months now. You get to know someone pretty well in that kind of setup. I can probably tell you the things you'll want to ask after you've heard. And you know, Eleanor, I do call him my friend. She was quiet on the way back, her head spinning. There was suddenly a dark cloud hanging over something that had seemed very simple and straightforward. Johnny spoke once before he said goodbye and dropped her off. Listen, Elle, I think I might have spoken out of turn, me running my big mouth off. I didn't warn you off. I meant you to try and get behind the thing that's going to get in your way if you don't get it out of him. I think of you as my sister, and I might feel a similar way about Danny. You're two really good people, and I think you're onto a good thing. He kissed her on the cheek. Go put on your lipstick and a pretty dress. I'm sure Danny will be dropping by as soon as he knows I've delivered you back safely. And don't tell your mom about Patricia, or I'll get another scolding letter.